Hello everybody, my name is Moses Villarta, but y'all just can't call me Lyle. In this video, I'll be trying to explain what Fair Information Practice Principle is and how can they be used in the federal regulations or laws. FIPS served as the foundation for privacy law and policies applicable to federal agencies and collection of widely accepted principles used when evaluating information systems, programs, and activities that affect individual privacy. These principles have informed federal statutes, the law of many U.S. states and foreign nations, and have been incorporated in the policies of many organizations around the world. How are they significant? Because they provide a framework for organizations to responsibly collect, use, and protect privacy of an individual's information. The 8 principles are the transparency principle, individual participation or consent principle, purpose specification, data minimization, use limitation principle, data quality and integrity, security principle, accountability and auditing principles. These principles will be explained by me in the succeeding slides to describe how they can be useful to people to protect their PII, personal identifiable information, and their uses according to government regulations and some examples. On this slide, I'm simply trying to put an overview on the comparison of the FIPS principles, other policies, laws, and regulations such as the GPDR and other U.S. privacy laws. The General Data Protection Regulation is a comprehensive privacy that applies to the European Union and the European Economic Area, while the Fair Information Practice Principles serves as a foundational framework for privacy protection and have influence globally. While not a law itself, FIPS provide general principles that can be adopted and implemented in various jurisdictions. The first FIPS principle that I want to discuss is the transparency, because it is the core principle within the FIPS, because it emphasizes the need for organizations to provide clear information to individuals regarding the collection, use, and disclosure of their personal information. In comparison, a federal agency can provide individuals with clear and concise notice of its privacy practices, including what PII is collected and how it is used and with whom it is shared. An example of FIPS would be organizations following their principles who may disclose their practices through privacy notices, explaining how data will be used, who will it be shared, and their individual rights. An example of other policies, laws, and regulations will be that a GPDR mandates organizations to provide individuals with privacy notices outlining the purpose, legal basis, retention periods, and rights associated with their personal data. With a consent principle, or otherwise individual participation, FIPS emphasizes in obtaining consents from individuals, such as the clients and the customers, before collecting or using or disclosing their personal information. In comparison, dependent on the relevance of the privacy frameworks, because they have a different approaches to consent, ranging from strict opt-in models to recognizing legitimate interest as a basis for data processing. An example of organizations following the FIPS may seek explicit consent through forms or mechanisms that ensures individuals understand and freely give their approval. An example of other policies, laws, and regulations would be a federal agency providing individuals with appropriate access to their PII and the opportunity to correct or amend it. With a purpose specification principle, fifth highlights the importance of organizations specifying the purpose for which personal information is collected, used, and disclosed. It ensures transparency and prevents the misuse of data. An example of this would be organizations following FIPS clearly state the purpose of their data collection and ensuring that the data is only used for those specified purposes. In comparison to other policies, laws, and regulations, a federal agency can specify the purpose for which PII is collected at the time of their collection and limits those subsequent use according to their purpose that are compatible with their governance. An example of this will be several privacy frameworks from federal or state requiring organizations to articulate specific purposes for data processing while placing limitations on secondary uses. A data minimization principle is where FIPS advocate for collecting only minimum amount that are specific according to its purpose. An example of this would be organizations following FIPS implementing practices to limit the collection of unnecessary personal data and ensure data is relevant and proportional to their organization's policy. A federal agency can collect the minimum amount of PII necessary to accomplish its legally authorized purpose and retain it only for as long as necessary according to its purpose. The agency can regularly review its holding to ensure that it is not retaining unnecessary information. An example would be like a GPDR policy requiring organizations to minimize their data collection, store it in the shortest necessary period or on a schedule, and ensure that accuracy to promote data minimizations by imposing restrictions on the collection and retention of personal information. The use limitation principle requires that personal data should not be used but according to its purpose only unless there is a consent of that data. An example would be from an organization who have procedures in place to ensure that this personal information is only used for specified purposes and is not shared without consent or legal authority. In comparison, a federal agency can limit the use and disclosure of PII to those purposes specified in accordance with its purpose where there is consent of the individual. And an example would be that agencies might have procedures in place to ensure that PII is only used for a specified purpose and is not shared without proper legal advice. The data quality and integrity principle requires that personal data should be accurate and complete. An example would be have a procedures in place to make sure that review and update of personal information are accurate. In comparison, a federal agency can ensure that PII stays accurate and relevant and timely and complete with extent necessary to ensure fairness to the individual's privacy. An example would be the agency might have policies and procedures for regular review. The security principles emphasizes on the implementation of the appropriate securities and safeguard against the risk from unauthorized access, such as data breach, infiltration, exfiltration, modification, or loss. An example would be organization following the principles of FIPS might have a security measures in place such as encryption, access control, and regular security audits, including response to security breaches and notification of their customers or clients. In comparison, federal agencies can protect PII by the same measures, and an example would be the agency might have security measures in place such as encryption, access control, and other governing security audits. The accountability and auditing principle requires that organizations are held accountable for compliance of FIPS, and organizations should have procedures and mechanisms to ensure that privacy requirements are protected. An organization following FIPS have a designated privacy officer responsible for overseeing compliance. In contrast, a federal agency can be accountable for complying with these principles and applicable privacy requirements, appropriately monitoring, auditing, and documenting. The 8 principles collectively form the Fair Information Practice Principles, and it provides a comprehensive framework for privacy protection. While FIPS provides this framework, other privacy policies, laws, and regulations such as GPDR and CCPA complement and expand this FIPS principle with more specific requirements and enforcement mechanisms. This is the end of my presentation. I hope that it has been informative for you, and thank you for watching.